Here. Frank didn't know it when he put the items up in the room, but it's sort of like an archaeological dig. As you go around the room, especially over here, we have the oldest things, and that's when the camera was pulled back a little further. Now these are really little items, but you can still pretty much see the full item. But as you go around the room, we start getting closer and closer until we get to the most recent level of the archaeological dig. When we get into, we're really close now, and they're way out of context, and now you see them in a whole different way, especially with the more recent pieces that are here. That's kind of the overview. Does anyone have questions about specific pieces?
Did you enhance the colors on these? Or that's just the way it is? Or?
This is pretty close. This was enhanced a small amount. This one was enhanced quite a bit. But even when it came straight out of the camera, there was already quite a bit of color happening in there. But that one I really wanted to bump up that kind of bluish purple. That for some reason I really like that color, and I wanted to bump that up, and how it fades a bit into. There's kind of a magenta in there, and then into the red, and then the orange right over there. I really wanted to pull that out. The opposite effect is over on the one right behind Fred, which is called Ironclad, which in that instance I actually pushed the color back. I desaturated that one because I really thought it helped like the texture of the metal and the texture of the paint that was kind of coming apart. That really stood out better that way. The piece next to it that's wood looks like it's been desaturated, but it hasn't. That was actually the way that looked. The sun was out, and it really on charred wood, it sort of makes it shiny. And so some pieces of the wood really reflect the light and are almost white. And then the wood that's underneath, where the bark had fallen off and exposed the wood underneath, that was really the color that wasn't fake or added in.
Is it important to you that the viewers know if you've adjusted the colors in your photographs?
No. Oh. No, most everybody asks what they are, which again is kind of to that point about if it was a painting, people probably would just take it for what it was, that it was some kind of a mood. But there is something about photography, and I don't mind saying what it is, but it is like, a photo has to be of something, it can't just be.
So it's not about the process, it's about the final image?
Yeah. So they just automatically assume that these are all like close-ups of something? To get the textural effect? Or? Yeah,
and in fact, they really are all close-ups. That one's not quite so close-up. That was a really big piece of concrete, actually, that had been multiple layers of paint on it.
From here, it looks like a map.
Yeah, and in fact, I mentioned that we were going to maybe talk about maps a little bit. I kind of have a thing about maps. I really like them.
Oh, you do? Okay, so you're kind of aware that they could look like...
Yeah, and so that's why this one's named. So naming to me is kind of important. I mean, in your mind, it can be whatever you want it to be, but yet to me, it kind of says something, and rather than just untitling it or whatever, I like to have a title about what it suggests to me. So this one to me looked like a satellite view of out west, because when you see those, the roads tend to be extremely long and straight, and so this one just looked like some road out in Nevada or something like that. This one is called Shoreline because to me this darker color out here looked like water. With maybe ice floating on it, so as though maybe this had been shot in, late spring or something like that, and this is the land over in here. And then this one is Shallow Reef, even though there was no water involved here at all, just lichen growing on an old sign.
It does actually look like that you had some kind of plant life floating on the top of the surface.
And the fact that this was kind of blurry down here, it just seems like there's water up above, and there's ripples in the water, what have you, and that's why it's not really in focus. This is also part of an old sign. So in general, we've got happening here on several of them is paint failure. All of them have paint in some case, and in some manner, either through rust or whatever, the paint isn't able to hang on, and it's peeling and flaking and falling off. This is a neat, same thing happening over here. This again is concrete, it's part of that same piece. And this are part of the same, this is an old Chevy truck. This is part of the door of an old truck.
Wow.
When you take a photograph of that one, of the Chevy truck door, is your focal point that focused, that minute? And then you take it back to develop it and
Right.
expand it to what you saw there?
Yeah, these were not what I had originally intended. And by that I meant when I saw this old truck, you know, I thought it was going to be about the grill and the headlights and the front or something else that clearly said, hey, this is a truck and it's got, you know, these cool shapes to it. It was from 1939. And like, okay, you don't see one of those every day. But as it turns out, those photos, although they were fine, they actually ended up looking similar to other ones that I had done. Which my whole thing was I wanted to try something completely different. So I had happened to shoot these as well, merely because I just thought they were interesting textures. So what has happened over time is, and I don't think I actually have one of the photos here, I shot something and the texture really showed up. And I said, well, there's something here, aside from what it actually looks like, this whole texture thing, I think there's something there. So then I began going out sometimes actually looking for things to shoot that would have texture. Or thinking about where might those things be, where that's going to happen. So something in the shade where it's going to have a bunch of moss on it, or you know, whatever that might be. So then I did shoot these all at the same time. I originally just thought, oh, they might be kind of interesting. I think the other view is going to be better. Got home and completely changed my mind that these I thought were actually much more interesting than the thing where you could tell that's a grill, that's a radiator, you know, whatever it might have been. Same thing kind of happened over here. I went out driving and I saw this old door on a factory or an old warehouse in Sheboygan. And it just had such interesting textures on it that I popped out of the car and shot that one and hoped that nobody, you know, thought I was like trying to figure out how to break in or anything like that. Because I did spend quite a bit of time. There's lots of different angles and all that, and this one just seemed to really, even though it was pretty straightforward, I just thought the patterns and the textures just really worked well on that one.
So are you pre-visualizing any of these, or now as you go forward, are you seeing these abstract shapes and where you're setting it up in the camera specifically in that crop frame? Or are you shooting
yeah, it's kind of a mixture.
Are you shooting larger and then picking what you want?
No, for the most part now I'm trying to shoot them both ways. Not shoot one way and then crop in later, but actually try to do it on site so that I don't have issues with, oh, I can't zoom in that far because it becomes pixelated or what have you. But sometimes I go out with a particular thing in mind and don't end up shooting anything. And then other times I'll go out thinking, well, I'll just take it with me just in case, and I'll stumble upon something like the door of the old warehouse. So it's just kind of as it happens. Sometimes I think when you force it too much, it doesn't actually come together. So some things just happen, like this truck. Never saw it before. Somebody cut down the weeds. All of a sudden I could see this old truck that had been sitting there. 2 days later the truck's gone. So sometimes I think things just kind of happen. I don't know why, you happen to be at the right place at the right time.
Is there a reason, or why do you choose to like make your titles explicit? Like they're naming something, they're naming an object or a thing. Especially your abstract ones. Like I can see these ones a little more because you know what they are. But those ones become so abstract that they could be anything if they didn't have a title.
Yeah, I've seen some debates about titles. You know, some people have never titled them, they always want it to be untitled, or, you know, does the title really matter, or what have you. I think the title does matter, and I'm just saying this is what it suggests to me. But, you know, if you never saw the title, it could be whatever, you know, it meant to you. But titles are important to me, and I spend some time kind of, you know, sometimes playing with the words, or, you know, is that really the best thing, or what looks like that, or, you know, just trying to figure out what it is so I can come up with a name that I think is appropriate, at least for me.
So do you ever get people, what's that one title again?
Which one, this one?
Yeah.
Shallow Reef.
So do you ever get people reading the title and just assuming that's what it is and later discovering that that's not what it is?
Yeah, I think that happens sometimes. Although I think, you know, they also sort of like, gee, I've never seen one quite like that. So I think it does kind of prompt the question of, is that really what that was, or is that something else?
Where's this reef?
Just like, you know, the one called Bizarre Pods, I had in mind to do a whole series of like weirdly shaped like fruit. Or, you know, kind of like Edward Weston did, where he did peppers and he did some very simple shapes. That's kind of my nod toward him, but I wanted to do it my way, which was with much more texture and little nodules and, you know, funny little things on them. But when I've been to the farmer's market in Sheboygan, there's a couple of really weird looking fruits and vegetables that I've thought about getting, and just sort of continuing out this series of the black background. And,
So these ones are artificially lit?
I'm sorry?
Are they artificially lit?
Yeah, those I just set up a card table in my house. And, well, yes and no, actually, rephrase that. There was window light coming in one side and just a little light bulb on the other, so nothing, you know, really elaborate or anything.